You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Now get the guns, the drugs. From my generation, I'll take the fall. The saints, the confirmation. And it's a sex, the gods, the fakes, the fraud. They're messing with me. Come on, come on, come on. Let's get it out. Move to the music. Play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Hey yo, Reliving the War episode 149. Thanks very much for stopping by. Nitro, taking place on the 31st of August, is live from Miami, Florida, while Raw, airing on the 5th of September, is from New Haven, Connecticut. Raw took place on a Saturday night, but we're going to compare shows as normal. The show was taped on Monday, if that makes you feel any better. Check out the SummerSlam video if it's still available. It's the biggest pay-per-view video to date on the channel, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And just before we begin, here's today's Jam Up Guy. RJ's getting ready to bring his own little Jam Up Guy into the world this August, and his brother Alex made him this awesome little onesie. This was brilliant, guys, so a big shout out to RJ, Alex, and a future legend of the business that we'll all meet this summer. Alright, I'm sure Hollywood Hogan has some important intel to share this week, so let's get started. Eric Bischoff's packing tonight. He's got his pen, and he says Eddie Guerrero will wrestle tonight while the Warrior will not. That's fair enough. Hogan says War Games is right around the corner, and the Black and White are going to use War Games to prove they're the most powerful force in wrestling today. Really, I don't think that claim can be made anymore because, well, you messed it up a bit, lads, didn't you? Hogan then announces his partners for War Games. It's Stevie Ray and Bret Hart. And once Stevie and Bret take everyone out, Hollywood's gonna face the man who hid away from Hogan for 8 years, the Warrior. Once Warrior gets taken care of, Hollywood's coming after Goldberg and the world title. Hogan's the power in pro wrestling, yada yada yada. Hulk then calls Warrior out, the lights begin to flicker. Be careful what you wish for, Hollywood, because the Warrior's in Miami and he's making his way down to the ring. Hogan says the NWOites came to see Warrior get destroyed. The lights go out again and smoke fills the ring and Warrior's gone. The Black and White planned on ambushing Warrior clearly, but they don't get a chance to because Warrior just vanished. Hollywood wonders how Warrior pulled off such a sick magic trick. We go to the commentary team and the main event gets announced for Nitro, Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan versus Sting and Lex Luger. And back in the ring we get the battle of the big boys. It's Raph versus Jim Powers. Jim Powers just can't get a break, and even though Raph's back winning matches, I don't foresee him getting a big break either anytime soon. Still, that meltdown finisher looks great and Raph continues to dominate mid-card talent. Norman Smiley got another chance to wrestle on Nitro when he faced Big Scott Norton, but as expected, it's another squash match. Norman didn't do a thing but take bumps. Scott performed a power slam, his signature shoulder breaker, and a powerbomb to win the match, though he could have ended it way earlier. After the bout, the lights went out and Warrior was seen watching the match from the rafters. Again, this isn't a revolution, mate. I recall Sting doing this for about a year. After losing a match on Thunder, Saturn's agreed to be Lodi's servant. Kenyon also joined the flock on Thunder, it seems, and it was Kenyon who cost Saturn the match. But Perry says he's a man of his word and he will serve as Lodi's little bitch up until Fall Brawl. The Wolfpac come to the ring without Sting, and check out Lex's sick goatee. What a badass. Luger says Bret Hart has a dilemma tonight, seeing as he's friends with both Hulk Hogan and Sting apparently, and Lex is looking forward to this main event. Nash announces Team Wolfpac for War Games. It's Nash, Sting and Lex, and Nash then sends a warning to Team WCW. DDP gets off lightly, but he will have to make a decision next week in regards to joining the Wolfpac. Piper gets reminded about a little backstage run-in he had with Big Sexy, and Nash tells Warrior a story about a warrior who fell asleep under a tree. When the Warrior woke up, he was greeted by 4 wolves. One of the wolves looked familiar, and when he reached out to pet that familiar wolf, it took off his hand. The other wolves then joined in and they feasted on the poor Warrior, and so the message is pretty simple. At War Games, if you're not with the Wolfpac, you'll get hunted by the Wolfpac. After a break, JJ Dillon wants the enforcer Arn Anderson to come down to the ring for a chat. Dillon tells Arn that he sometimes goes back to watch old Horseman tapes he has at home. He found a tape of Arn Anderson talking about his upcoming arrival to Mid-Atlantic, and the tape plays while Arn watches from the ring. JJ says there was always something there with Arn even before he became a horseman, and when Anderson did eventually become a horseman, he became the heart and soul of the group. Dylan always thought WCW would be okay as long as the horsemen were around, but the NWO came along and fragments of WCW began getting taken away. Dylan worried about what was going to happen to the company, and he worried that the horsemen would never ride again. So Dylan wants Arn to listen to Steve McMichael and Chris Benoit. Benoit returns to Nitro right here, and 3 of the 4 horsemen have a private discussion in the ring. After a brief talk, the enforcer tries to leave, but JJ stops him. Dylan says that he was there for Arn 15 years ago when Arn needed him, and now that Dylan needs Anderson, it seems pretty clear what the real issue is here. The enforcer's afraid. Arn's afraid to bring back the 4 horsemen. A Vince McMahon promo kicks off Raw this week. On Nitro, Eddie Guerrero takes on Brian Adams. McMahon's in a great mood tonight because on September 27th, a master plan's gonna unfold. An emotional and physical breakdown's gonna take place. At the WWF Breakdown pay-per-view, Stone Cold Steve Austin will no longer be WWF champion, and that's a guarantee. At SummerSlam, The Undertaker dominated Austin. He even had an insurance policy in place, but The Undertaker sent his insurance policy back to the dressing room like a fool, while Austin went on to a talk show to discuss how much he respects The Undertaker. Undertaker and Kane should terrorize WWF. They should be striking fear into the hearts of their opponents. But McMahon thinks the other superstars are laughing at the Brothers of Destruction. The other superstars aren't afraid of the brothers because The Undertaker and Kane have been reduced to, and I quote, 2 putrid pussies. Oh my god. Vince instantly regrets that statement because the 2 putrid pussies then make their way down to the ring and McMahon runs away. We'll hopefully learn more about this master plan that's going to unfold at the next pay-per-view, but there you go. We have left the highway to hell and we're now facing a breakdown. On Nitro, Eddie Guerrero did not want to compete in the ring, so he offers himself up on a silver platter to award-winning Canadian singer and songwriter Brian Adams. The Warrior watched this one from the rafters, wondering why there was a serious lack of rocket fuel in the ring as Eddie invited Adams to punch him and pin him. Brian looks confused and I don't know why. It takes him a little time before he accepts what's going on, but the only real action we get here is Eddie getting thrown to the other side of the ring and Adams eventually decides to cover Guerrero and head to the back. Easiest payday ever. Eddie grabs a mic and he says Bischoff may have the pen, but Guerrero isn't going to give Eric an opportunity to sue him. Eddie's unable to finish his promo though because his microphone gets cut off. DOA versus Shamrock and Blackman on Raw, Ernest Miller versus Scotty Riggs on Nitro. Check out Paul Ellering's shirt. He's just so down with what's happening right now. He should have been called Mr. Internet Explorer Paul Ellering or Paul Ellering Netscape Navigator. Look it up, kiddos, the OGs will remember it well. Seeing as Ken Shamrock had a great display at SummerSlam, Steve's taken Kenny Boy back under his wing, though the Mavug Dojo has ceased operations for a while. Mr. .com watches on as Ken messes up one of his boys. Shamrock kicks 8-ball in the jaw before tagging in Stevie, and the Backer McAlackers have no chance at all. Fast kicks, drop kicks, jumping shoulder tackles, cold as ice. Just when things were getting spicy, The Undertaker and Kane show up, and of course they go for the biggest dog in the yard. So Steve Blackman has his work cut out for him. Kane and Taker destroy Big Stevie Cool while Shamrock's too busy with the bald biker mice from Mars on the outside. Steve obviously doesn't want to cause any life-threatening injuries to 2 of WWF's main superstars because he needs this job. He needs money for the new Blackman mobile that's going to transform into a fighter jet and a submarine, so he lets the brothers have their way with him. 'Tis but a scratch. The DOA leave, Taker and Kane leave, and Shamrock pretends he didn't see Blackman getting attacked as Raw moves on to its next match. On Thunder this past week, week, Ernest Miller turned heel by attacking Disco Inferno from behind. Yeah, attacking another heel from behind. That's effective. Ernie's journey as a bad guy continues by wrestling another heel on Monday Nitro, so yeah, wonderful. I know it's the mid-card and it doesn't really matter either way, but WCW were absolute masters in booking matches that gave more casual fans no one to cheer for. Shivani says that the flock will be set free if Saturn can beat Raven at Fall Brawl in 2 weeks' time. So we could be saying goodbye to the flock very, very soon. Rewatching Nitros again though has made me realise something. The flock in WCW is easily one of the most overrated factions in history. There were some good wrestlers in the faction, no doubt, and Raven was a pretty enigmatic character. Some of Raven's matches have been great too in WCW, especially on pay-per-view, but the flock as a whole just didn't go anywhere at all. Still, the same can't be said for many guys in WCW just due to the pecking order. Ernest Miller wins with a front spin kick. He says after the match that people shouldn't hate him because he's beautiful. He's the greatest, he's a world karate champion, and we should all bow down to the cat's greatness. Val Venis versus Vader on Raw, Konnan versus Marty Jannetty on Nitro. Alright, sounds good. Val says he's like the family dog, loyal, obedient, and comes when he's called. He'll also poop in your garden and lick his own butthole. Is this the match where Big Van Vader redeems himself and he becomes an unstoppable monster once again? No it's not. He puts Val on the mat at the start of the match, but we quickly cut over to Dustin Runnels holding a sign that says he's coming back. If this isn't in reference to Davey Boy Smith, then I have no interest whatsoever. Vader rocks Val in the corner, but Venis comes back with a running crossbody. Vader tries again, and even though Val gets a boot up in the corner, the big man's still able to plant his opponent with a belly-to-belly suplex. Val then takes a stiff clothesline, and Vader follows this up with a middle rope splash. The big Valboski kicks out, so Vader hits one more clothesline before Big Bully Bradshaw makes his way down to the ring. Remember, Bradshaw and Vader had some issues on Sunday Night Heat, but that doesn't matter because the Phenom and the Big Red Machine make another appearance and Bradshaw decides to get out of harm's way. Vader and Venis get destroyed just like Steve Blackman earlier on. Vader even takes a double choke slam, so it's another match that ends prematurely, and the message the brothers are trying to send is clear. Undertaker and Kane are not a pair of putrid pussies. On Nitro, Marty Jannetty got himself a new haircut. He trimmed the mullet. He should have saved his money, to be honest, because this is his last match in WCW. So say goodbye to Party Marty. He suffers a shoulder injury in this bout and he ends up getting released while recovering. It's hard to tell exactly when Marty gets injured, but I think it's from taking this hip toss right here, followed by Konnan's rolling clothesline. Marty looks down at his arm briefly after taking it and he gets out of the ring to recompose himself. Though he's able to put K-Dog down with a super kick, and he leaves us with the ultimate parting gift when he performs a devastating chin lock. Not one chin lock, not two chin locks. Oh yeah.
Marty Jannetty chin lock. Oh yeah.
Who would have thought Jannetty's final Nitro match would be the best match of his whole career? Konnan gets dropkicked and he takes a back elbow in between this chinlock fest. Marty performs a flying crossbody, a snap suplex, and a fist drop. I don't know what's gotten into Marty this week, but I'm certainly going to reach out to my contact to buy a bag this Saturday. Unfortunately, the good times stop abruptly when Konnan performs an X-Factor followed by the Tequila Sunrise. Marty taps out, but all joking aside, this really was Marty's best performance so far in WCW, and Konnan gave Marty a lot of time to get his stuff in. But that's another OG of Reliving the War riding off into the sunset as times continue to change every Monday night, or Thursday night, whatever. The Rock and Mark Henry get a tag team title shot next against the New Age Outlaws. On Nitro, Lodi and Saturn take on High Voltage. The Rock says he's beaten Billy Gunn and Jesse James all over the country and tonight will be no different. Triple H may have won the IC title at SummerSlam, but that doesn't matter. Even if Rock and Henry don't win the tag team titles, that doesn't matter either, because Rock will always and forever be the People's Champion.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Shut up.
The The Rock doesn't appreciate being told to suck it too much after taking a hip toss, so he gets up, he punches Billy Gunn in the mouth, and he performs a body slam. B.A. Billy Gunn fires back with a clothesline before tagging in Road Dogg, and Road Dogg shows off his dance moves before hitting The Rock. This used to be considered cool, and I'm too old to know if it's still cool, but I hope not. Rock gets out of a headlock before tagging in Big Mark Henry, and whoa, Big Mark shows no mercy right here. Road Dogg takes a body slam and a leg drop before tagging out again. Absolute dominance from the world's strongest man. Rock takes advantage by laying the smackdown in the corner before the real Double J takes a real people's elbow. Big Mark comes in for a grizzly bear hug, and James finally gets a break after dodging a splash. Billy gets tagged in and he and Rock get to work. Mr. Ass gets all fired up and he and Rock end up on the outside while Mark and James fight in the ring. Mark ends up sending James over the top rope, and then Chyna interferes. Yeah, it's another DQ finish on Raw. We're 3 for 3. Chyna wants payback for what Mark was about to do last week, and it's actually Billy and James who save Mark Henry from getting destroyed. So that's how it ends. It looks like Mark has a big problem on his hands. On Monday Nitro, Konnan comes to the ring with Lodi and Raven. Raven makes Konnan rip into Perry, and Chris tries to force Perry to hit him. Saturn's trying to be a man of his word, and he's trying his best to remain composed while he serves as Lodi's servant. Saturn wants to begin the match, but Lodi says no. This strategy fails, of course, and Lodi decides to get out of the ring when Robbie Rage overpowers him twice. Saturn gets in, and Rage remains in control to begin with. And when Saturn puts Rage down, Lodi again wants to get in the ring and claim all the glory. Kenny tags in, Lodi tags out. Saturn takes a gut-wrench slam, and even though he's able to kick Chaos a few times in the corner, High Voltage are able to come back with some double-team action. That's quite an overhead suplex right there from the Rager. High Voltage stay in control by working together while Lodi stays on the apron, almost afraid to get involved. Chaos mistimes a springboard shoulder block, and it's Robbie who ends up taking a Death Valley driver. Lodi once tagged in, Rage gets pinned, and High Voltage take another loss on Monday Nitro. Saturn feels like he has no choice but to play along with Lodi's nonsense, but at Fall Brawl, Saturn's looking forward to potentially ending the whole Flock faction for good. Another Tiger Ali Singh promo takes place on Raw, plus we've got Southern Justice versus the Headbangers. On Nitro, DDP and Roddy Piper cut a promo. Babu's been eating sardines for 4 days straight and he hasn't brushed his teeth either, so you know where this is going. Tiger's gonna pay some hot American babe $500 to kiss our main man right here, and this is the lucky lady. She has to kiss Babu for 5 seconds. She does it for about 20 seconds, and look at Babu right here, the dirty bastard. The girl gets paid, everyone laughs, but The Undertaker and Kane don't find this funny at all. Tiger and Virgil get chokeslammed straight to hell, and yes, we get the point now. There was no interference at all in the Southern Justice vs Headbangers match. Mosh was able to make easy work of Dennis Knight at the beginning of the match, and Thrasher also brought the pain to the former Phineas Godwin. Mark Canterbury was able to perform much better than his partner though, after hitting a power slam, a body slam, and a running elbow drop. Dennis comes back in and he's able to do a little better after his partner weakened up Thrasher. Marsh comes in and the crowd stay relatively quiet for the hot tag, but Marsh gets distracted by Mark and Dennis pulls off a slop drop, now named the Problem Solver. Nothing special at all here. JR says Southern Justice are looking for a tag team title match against the New Age Outlaws, so we maybe have that one to look forward to in the future. Backstage, The Undertaker tries to get into Vince McMahon's locker room. The door's locked, so Kane uses a sledgehammer to force his way in. Mr. McMahon's nowhere to be found, and if I were Vince, I'd be heading home right about now. On Nitro, DDP comes to the ring and he confirms Team WCW for War Games. It's himself, Warrior, and Piper. Eazy-E thought his pen could keep guys out who Page wanted to bring in, but it looks like Bischoff's pen ran out of ink. Hogan isn't the only one who has a shot at winning War Games. Hollywood's mind's a little stirred up right now, and DDP wants to introduce one of the men who helped stir it up. It's Roddy Piper. Hot Rod walks to the ring and he talks about Bret Hart. Piper was in the locker room for Bret's first ever match, and the Hitman looked like a cross between Barney the Dinosaur and a Power Ranger. Okay. Bret said to Piper that his dad said Piper has to be his kayfabe cousin, and Piper says he has no family in wrestling. He doesn't even have a dog. And after Piper gave Bret some advice on how to beat his upcoming opponent, the Hitman was proud as punch that he won. So Bret latched on to Piper and he would follow him around airports while Roddy would slap him away, telling His Excellency to get lost. Hart would go on to have a brilliant career. He became a world champion, but now he's a world champ. Piper was once Bret's friend, but Piper knows that Bret's afraid just like he was way back in his first match, and that's why he hides behind guys who wear NWO shirts. The Giant then rushes to the ring to attack Piper and DDP, and he does a pretty good job of it too. As a matter of fact, the Giant has no issues at all taking out both DDP and Piper. So why didn't Hogan choose Giant for War Games, and why can one guy be two members of Team WCW so easily? Giant gets handcuffed, Doug Dillinger and the boys are going to bring the Giant to jail, and Nitro moves on. X-Pac takes on D'Lo next in a rematch from Fully Loaded. On Nitro, Scotty Steiner cuts a promo. A strong side headlock from X-Pac starts us off, and a poke to the eye stops Kid's momentum early on. X-Pac tries to recover with his usual backflip counter during a hip toss attempt, but this time he's put on the mat after a clothesline. D'Lo smacks X-Pac around a little before launching him into the corner. The European champ's feeling confident, so he hits a few more clotheslines, but he tries one too many times and he gets kicked in the face. X-Pac then pulls off a jumping clothesline, and D'Lo ends up in the perfect spot for a Bronco Buster. So Kid pulled off his signature move, and for a moment it looked like we had a new European champion. But Pac also got too confident when he tried one more Bronco Buster, and he ends up getting D'Lo's boot right in the balls. Waltman must have balls of steel because he's still able to counter a press slam attempt with an X Factor. Pac covers D'Lo, and you guessed it, another DQ finish on Raw. This time it's Jeff Jarrett with his new fresh haircut. Jarrett attacks Waltman, and the two end up heading back through the audience, leaving D'Lo to face The Undertaker and Kane. Clearly, Vince McMahon needs to make an appearance and stop this new path of destruction. The Rock runs down to the ring to back up D'Lo, and the Great One shows absolutely no fear when confronting the brothers. He tries to attack Kane, and look, D'Lo leaves his teammate high and dry, and the Rock gets destroyed. The first hint of a babyface turn right here for the People's Champ. Rock showed loyalty to one of his boys, and he wasn't shown the same respect, so let's see where this goes. By the way, I've had enough of Kane and Undertaker's attacks already. They've totally overdone it here, and when it becomes expected, it loses a lot of impact. I understand why they're doing it, but it's a little too much at this point. For me, anyway. On Nitro, Scott Steiner's back with Dr. Dickweed, and Scott says he felt the heat when he walked into the arena tonight. The ladies' eyes are beaming on Big Papa Pump as they wonder if he's a myth, a legend, or a phenomenon. Scott says he's all three wrapped into one, and he'll give you that feeling that makes you hit the ceiling. Very good. JJ Dillon's still questioning the seriousness of Steiner's injury, so Scott needs a second opinion from another doctor. Dr. Juju Ubangi from Jamaica has been flown in by Doc to give us a second opinion on Steiner's current health, and here he is. He looks familiar, to be honest. Dr. Juju carries a stick that has eyeballs. He looks like he's into alternative medicine, and he says if Scott concentrates on him for just a moment, then Big Papa Pump could be healed. Steiner says he's ready, and Dr. Ubangi throws some powder around the ring, courtesy of Shawn Michaels. Juju throws some on Scott as the audience show their displeasure, and after tapping Scott on the head, the big bad booty daddy's been saved. So Scott can now wrestle his brother, and Dillon can back off. Steiner then addresses his brother. He says he's the bigger, better, stronger, and faster Steiner brother, but Rick ends up appearing and he doesn't need to get physical in order to clear out the ring. Rick Steiner says he's watching Scott like a hawk, and at Fall Brawl, the dog-faced gremlin's gonna kick Scott's ass. The Warrior watched this promo too, and I'm sure he thought it was brilliant. Marc Mero takes on Edge next on Raw, and we've got Juventud Guerrera versus Evan Karagias on Nitro. I was looking forward to Edge versus Mero. These two worked together quite well at SummerSlam, and a one-on-one match was definitely warranted, but this one ends early, and it's another DQ finish on Raw. I'm amazed at how many disqualifications there's been on Raw, and it kind of feels like the WWF were throwing this one away because it was on a Saturday night. JR also thanks the fans for staying up late, so I'm assuming this episode was also shown in a completely different time slot. Mero pulls off a backdrop followed by a clothesline. Edge replies with a flapjack. Marvelous Marc then gets clotheslined out of the ring, and Edge dives over the top rope with an awesome crossbody. No time to celebrate though, because Gangrel shows up to attack Edge. Edge gives as good as he gets when the two get in the ring, and a spear leads to both guys slugging it out on the canvas. Meanwhile, on the rampway, Kane and Taker appear once again to beat up Marc Mero, and that's how it ends. Officials hit the ring to break up the Edge and Gangrel fight, while no one really cares what happens to Marc. On TNT, Evan Karagias makes his Nitro debut, and while he does make a few more appearances in the coming months, he gets featured a lot more beginning this time next year. He gorilla presses Hoovy right on the top rope before performing a quick running back elbow. He doesn't look terrible here in his first big Monday night match, but it doesn't take long for Guerrero to pull off a missile dropkick that slows the outrageous Karagias down. The crowd pop around 3 times for something happening away from the ring. I think a female fan was removing her top because they start chanting "take it off" at one point. This goes on for quite a bit, and not many fans are focused on the matchup. Bobby Heenan says Karagias is going to be a big star one day, and I agree if he keeps pulling off chin locks like this one right here. Evan ends up on the outside though, and this gives Hoovy a chance to perform a crossbody from the top rope, and he follows this up with a leg drop from the top rope when the two get back in the ring. Guerrero misses a corner attack, and this gives Evan the opportunity to perform a leg lock. The crowd loudly chant "boring" before popping again for the female fan in attendance. And I don't know, the action in the ring's just okay, and the fans not caring for it kinda makes us viewers at home not care for it either. You kinda feel bad for Evan too, because it is a big opportunity, you know? Hoovy stops Karagias from pulling off a top rope move, and Evan takes a top rope Frankensteiner. Karagias gets up and he gives Hoovy the exact same move, but his top rope landsault completely misses, and this is where the match ends. Guerrero performs the Hoovy driver, and Juventud Guerrera retains the Cruiserweight title. I wanted to like this one, but it had too much going against it. Al Snow gets interviewed by Jim Ross next, plus we have the Oddities versus Lodi and Droz. On Nitro, Chris Jericho takes on Disco Inferno. Al says he was a big star in ECW and he could be a big star in WWF. Al Snow can carry the ball when it's given to him, but Vince McMahon hasn't given him any chances. Jim wonders how fans can take Al seriously when he talks to a mannequin head, and Al says he's normal, he's as normal as JR. He has a wife, he has children, he goes to the grocery store, he mows his lawn. Head just sits there and Head supervises. Ross wonders what the voices sound like. What does Head sound like? Al says if it's sloppy it can be... no, just kidding. Al says Head has different voices, Head's actually different people. And Snow compares the voices to people believing in God. You can't see God, yet people, like JR, believe in him. So the same thing's true for the voices. It just means you aren't listening and you haven't opened up your mind. Al talks about freaking out at JR as the Leif Cassidy character, and Al says he just couldn't take it anymore and JR was the only person he could trust. Al didn't have a breakdown though, he had an awakening. So what happened to him earlier in WWF wasn't necessarily a bad thing. In regards to the meeting Snow wanted to get with Vince McMahon, it was the voices who wanted to talk to Vince and it wasn't Al. This makes Ross question if it's Al who's really in control here. A great little interview here and one of the highlights of Raw this week. These were pretty effective if used for the right reasons, and Al definitely needed a little more backstory for those who mightn't have had access to ECW, so good job. What's not a good job is the Oddities versus LOD and Droz match. Hawk's out here trying to dance with Violent J and Shaggy 2-Dope, and when the ICP tell Hawk to get lost, the Road Warrior launches an attack. Droz then tries to tag in Animal, but Hawk comes in instead, and Hawk's going to end up costing his team the match. He does manage to pull off a fist drop, but he tags in Kurgan for some reason, and he ends up taking a boot to the face. The Giant Silva then comes in and he powerbombs Hawk, and that's how the match ends. Another week, another loss for LOD 2000. Undertaker and Kane did not interfere in this match because they were too busy beating up a lowly crew member backstage. A very short match next on Nitro. Chris Jericho comes to the ring and he says,
Unterglieben, glauten, globen.
Depending on when you were born, you're either going to say Def Leppard or The Offspring. Chris says he knows why everyone's a Jerichoholic. It's because Chris is better than all of us. But as our role model, Jericho promises to never ever let us down. You can tell Chris is rushing here, but he knows how important it is to get some mic time. Even if it's just a 20-second promo, he's gonna make the most of it. Jericho said he would fight to get mic time backstage, and as we've learned since beginning 1998, it's definitely paid off. Chris is very proud of this shoulder block to start the match off, though Disco replies with a swinging neckbreaker. Chris then takes a few boots in the corner and Disco performs a body slam, but too much hot dogging leads to Disco punching the mat instead of Chris's face. Disco gets his knees up during a lion salt attempt, and this leads to Chris taking an atomic drop followed by a clothesline. Chris kicks out of the follow-up pin, so the Inferno pulls off a pop-up spinebuster, but again, he only gets a 2. Disco then performs the Chartbuster. Yeah, he's brought back the Chartbuster, even though he suspiciously stopped doing it when the Disciple came along. Interesting. Chris gets a foot on the ropes. He's then able to apply the Lion Tamer, even though Disco tries his best to fight it, and the Inferno has no choice but to tap out. This was a fine example of making the most out of limited time. Other guys would throw the towel in early if they only had a few minutes, but this was good, all things considered. Too Much versus the Boricuas is the semi-main event on Raw. On Nitro, it's Goldberg versus Al Green. Jesus and Miguel represent Los Boricuas. Jose's still out with a neck injury, and Savio won't be seen on Raw again following an injury in the Brawl for All tournament. The Boricuas pull off double atomic drops early on before the match settles down, but the crafty Too Much take the lead when Brian Christopher attacks Jesus from the apron. Too Sexy also performs a suplex on the outside while the referee's distracted, and back in the ring, Scott Too Hot Taylor pulls off a pump handle fall-away slam. In comes Christopher, and we see a heart attack from Too Much. Christopher pulls off a dropkick before tagging out again, and Jim Ross announces that Raw will once again take place on Saturday night next week, but it'll be on at 7/6 Central. We get more dancing from Scotty in between offense, and seeing as Miguel hasn't tagged in, I'm expecting a monstrous, thunderous ovation when he enters the match. The opportunity comes when Scott gets launched into Brian, and Brian gets knocked off the apron. Here we go, and nothing. Absolutely no change in crowd reaction. Miguel hits a few dropkicks, and the Boricuas work together to get Christopher out of the ring. Taylor's on the wrong end of a double powerbomb, but Jesus makes the rookie mistake of inadvertently distracting the referee while Miguel covers Scott. Brian hits Miguel with a Tennessee Jam, and Too Much defeat Los Boricuas on Raw's War. Some good offense in this match. The crowd couldn't have cared less, but it wasn't bad. Kevin Nash joins the commentary team to watch Al Green versus Goldberg. Nash explains that Al Green was his original tag team partner in WCW, and if that's the case, you should have reserved the spot for Al in the Wolfpac Big Sexy. Mr. Green tries attacking Billy Boy in the corner, but he ends up getting thrown to the other side of the ring, and he takes a kick to the face too. Goldberg performs a backdrop followed by a power slam. The crowd boos when Al goes to the outside for a breather, but Goldberg's right on his tail, and the destruction's gonna continue. Al tries a sleeper hold. Interesting strategy. Goldberg just throws Al over his shoulder to break the hold, and then the crowd goes wild as the champ lines up a spear. Al Green gets speared out of his boots. Goldberg then performs the jackhammer, and that's another win for the unbeatable WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Schiavone said during Goldberg's entrance that a victory on Nitro would bring Goldberg to 140 wins, while Kevin Nash said after the match that it was 141 wins, so even WCW have no idea what's going on. We'll stick with Tony's number, 140. It's still quite the jump right here because Goldberg only wrestled one match since last week, another dark match against the Giant on Thunder. It's almost becoming a tradition. The real streak counter is at 132 wins. Main event time. On Nitro, Hogan and Bret take on Sting and Luger. On Raw, Double J takes on Too Cold Scorpio. Oh, let me get this. Yeah, there we go.
Everybody, here comes Too Cold Scorpio! He's going for fucking fire, so they say who with it? Too Cold Scorpio!
A weird main event for Raw, but it's Saturday night and it's late, so I guess I can see why. We've covered Friday Night Raws in the past too, and they didn't have big main events either. Still, nothing wrong with Scorpio versus Jarrett. It's not like they aren't experienced. I sure do hope it's not a DQ finish though. Jarrett tells Scorpio not to look at him right in the eye because it pisses Double J off. Wow, sorry Jeff. Jim Ross delivers some bad news as the two get to work in the ring. Apparently, Steve Blackman suffered a knee injury and he might be out of action. This wasn't the storyline either, by the way. Blackman does return to house shows in late September, but we won't be seeing Big Stevie Cool compete in the ring again until mid-October 1998 on Raw. Double J performs a power slam, Scorpio replies with a German suplex. We see a backdrop from Jarrett followed by a dropkick, and after a quick break on the outside, Scorpio gets back in the ring and Jarrett takes a super kick. Scorpio gets the better of Jarrett after a brief fight on the outside, though back in the ring, Jarrett hits a clothesline on 2 Code. The fake Double J then delivers a pop-up powerbomb that only scores him a 2 count, so it's chinlock time in the Raw main event. Great to see chinlocks make a big comeback this week. What a brilliant move. Scorpio fights out, he hits a front spin kick. The hot action in the Raw main event makes our guy here want to fall asleep. Scorpio goes for a moonsault and Double J moves out of the way. After hitting a superplex, the match ends when X-Pac hits the ring to attack Jarrett. The two fight on the outside and through the crowd, leaving Scorpio all alone to face, you guessed it, The Undertaker and Kane. Vince McMahon comes out to watch the beatdown and McMahon likes what he sees. Poor Scorpio takes a spiked tombstone and then the brothers notice McMahon on the rampway. Raw ends with Vince running away while Kane and Taker give chase. Honestly, not a great ending to Raw. On Nitro, Bret Hart clearly has issues wrestling Sting tonight. He doesn't look like he wants to fight his best friend in the whole world. So it's Luger and Bret who start things off and Bret gets a front row seat for Lex's crab pose. Lucky man. Bret chokes Lex in the corner and Sting gently taps Bret's head to get him to stop. Bret obliges. In the opposite corner, Lex fires up on the US champ a little and when Lex tags in Sting, the hitman quickly tags out. Hogan wasn't ready to come into the match just yet and Hollywood looks a little annoyed at His Excellency. Hollywood gets in and the exchange between Hogan and Sting's nothing special. Remember when fans couldn't wait for these two to fight in the middle of the ring? Yeah, those days are long gone. It's the usual bullshit here, all strikes and no wrestling moves. Hogan hits the mat once after taking a few punches, but he gets up again and the punches and kicks continue. Sting chokes Hogan with his own bandana before Luger comes back in. Luger takes a boot in the corner followed by a clothesline. Bret extends his hand to Hulk, but Hulk refuses to tag hard in. It's a bit weird. Lex gets choked in the corner and Hogan thinks Bret's waited long enough with his hands out like a total asshole, so Bret comes in and the choking of Lex Luger continues. We see a backbreaker from Hart, a suplex from Lex. The two then wipe each other out with a double clothesline and this leads to Sting and Hogan getting back in the ring. The crowd go nuts for Sting firing up and they go even crazier for a Stinger splash. The second splash gets messed up though because the booty man wasn't quick enough to pull Hogan away. So the spot gets set up again and of course the disciples quick to move Hogan out of the way this time. Hogan begins whipping Sting with his weight belt and Bret takes the belt away from Hollywood. Bret then leaves the ring, Hulk follows him, and the Hitman and the Hulkster have an argument on the entranceway that leads to the Wolfpac winning via countout. Bret says he wants nothing to do with what Hogan was doing to Sting, and Hollywood says he now has a big problem with Bret. Bret and Hogan push each other around back in the ring. The NWO Black and White then show up, but the ring gets covered in smoke as the Warrior makes his presence felt. When the lights come back on, everyone's been taken out except Hogan. Hollywood's hiding in the corner while Bret has seemingly disappeared. The Warrior says he can smell Hogan's fear, and Hogan decides to get out of the ring and run away. That must have been some good smoke boy because the NWO Black and White's absolutely cabbaged. That's how Nitro ends this week. Not brilliant, but better than Raw's last 10 minutes. I have to give it to Nitro this week. WCW show wasn't necessarily good, but it was better than WWF Raw. Raw had too many disqualifications. The Brothers of Destruction thing was completely overdone. There was no appearance from the WWF champion, but if you watch SummerSlam, you'd know why, I guess. And the format for Raw this week was a bit messed up due to it airing late on a Saturday night. We've now got 63 points for Nitro, 70 points for Raw, and we've got 16 ties on the board. In the TV ratings, Nitro scored a 6.0 on the unopposed Monday night. Raw scored a 3.0 on Saturday night. We've got one more episode of Nitro before Fall Brawl War Games. The Wolfpac try to recruit DDP into the red and black again. We've got a Kurt Hennig versus Dean Malenko steel cage match, and we'll see if Bret Hart has left Team Hollywood just before War Games. On Saturday Night Raw, Al Snow wants to speak to some higher-ups in WWF. The Rock has something to say to the Big Red Machine, and D-Generation X take on Kai and Tai in a 4-on-4 tag team match. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all again next week.